You know that moment when you realize something wasn't really a mistake at all, when the spilled drink, the accidental touch, the gaze that lingers just a second too long, it was all intentional. Thought out, I should have known the first time. It happened. It was the hottest day of the summer, the kind of heat that clings to your skin, thick and smothering. The air was so heavy it felt like trying to breathe through a soaked towel. I was in the backyard, trimming the rose bushes, sweat running down my back beneath a thin sundress. My husband, Greg, was inside, buried in yet another one of his endless work calls. He hadn't touched me in months, hadn't looked at me in weeks. Then I heard the squeak of the garden hose. I turned just in time to see the spray arc toward me. A glittering ribbon of water catching the sunlight. I barely had time to gasp before it struck me square in the chest. It jolted me. My dress clung to me instantly, the fabric turning see-through against my skin. My breath caught, my nipples tightened in the sudden chill, and then silence. No apology, no startled "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Just stillness. I wiped the water from my eyes and saw him, Liam, my stepson, 22 years old, shirtless. His sun-kissed skin shimmered with sweat. The hose was still dangling from his hand. His chest rose and fell, his breath quickened, his dark eyes, intense and unreadable, followed the drops as they trailed down my neck, across my collarbone, outlining my breasts beneath the drenched fabric. For one endless second, neither of us moved. Then his lips curled, not a smile, a challenge. "Oops," he said, his voice low and rough. That's when I knew this wasn't an accident. It was a provocation, not the wife, not the stepmother. Eleanor Marie Whitaker, a woman who had spent years folding herself into the background of other people's lives until she nearly forgot what it felt like to be noticed. At 44, she could trace her slow fading through the family photo albums. The radiant bride in champagne silk, 2005. The hopeful young wife beside Greg at their first home closing, 2008. Then the increasingly blurred figure in the corners of later photos, like a ghost haunting her own life. The most recent picture on her nightstand was 5 years old. A marriage that looked perfect on the surface. Eleanor met Greg Whitaker at a charity gala in 2003. He was 35. A rising star in commercial real estate with a razor-sharp jawline and a smile that never quite touched his eyes. She was 26. An art history grad working at the museum, captivated by his confidence after a chaotic childhood with her alcoholic father. Their wedding photos showed a golden couple, his broad hands circling her waist, her auburn curls spilling over bare shoulders as they sliced into a 3-tiered cake. What the pictures didn't show was how he began booking work trips on her birthday, the adoption papers they signed for Liam at 16, not because Eleanor wanted to, but because Greg insisted the boy needed stability after his mother's death. The cracks no one saw. It began with small vanishings, Greg forgetting their anniversary 3 years straight, her friends slowly dropping their lunch invitations. "You're always so busy with Liam." Even waiters handed the check directly to Greg, as if she didn't exist. By the time Liam turned 21, Eleanor had mastered the art of making herself invisible, tucking her body into corners of the couch, chewing quietly at dinner while Greg and Liam argued over sports stats, wearing muted tones that blended into the background. Then came the morning she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror and didn't recognize herself. The summer of heat and hunger. The heat wave began in June. Record-breaking temperatures turned their suburban home into an oven. Greg vanished into his air-conditioned office. Liam sprawled shirtless by the pool. Eleanor floated through the house like a shadow, her sundresses sticking to her legs, her skin damp and restless. That's when the dream started. Not about Liam, never about Liam. She told herself sternly. They were about water, drowning, sinking into a cool, endless blue where no one could see her crying. She'd wake from them gasping, her body humming with a strange, forgotten urgency. The garden hose moment should have been her warning. When Liam's eyes followed the water tracing her form, when his smirk said this was no mistake, Eleanor knew she should have turned away, told Greg, at the very least changed out of the dress. But she didn't. She stood frozen, overwhelmed not by shock, but by something far more dangerous, the electric thrill of being seen, really seen. That night, she took a long shower. Steam filled the bathroom as she replayed the moment. Her fingers shook as she washed her body, the soap slipping just as a knock sounded at the door. "Eleanor," Liam's voice muffled through the wood. "You okay in there? Been a while." Her breath caught, the soap skidded across the tile. I'm fine, she called out, her voice higher than normal. Silence. Okay, just checking. But he didn't walk away. She could feel him out there, standing still, listening to the water run. The question that haunted her: why did his attention feel like rain after a drought? That was the truth Eleanor couldn't say. Not to her therapist on Thursdays, not to her sister in their monthly calls. After so many years of being Greg's shadow, Liam's gaze made her feel something terrifyingly alive. She told herself it would pass, that she was imagining it, that she just needed to reconnect with Greg to save what was left of their marriage. But then Liam left his sketchbook open on the kitchen table, and what Eleanor found inside tore every boundary to pieces. The sketchbook lay there like a dare. Eleanor had only meant to move it, just slide it aside to put down the grocery bags, but a flicker of charcoal lines caught her eye. The curve of something familiar pulled her in. Her fingers trembled as she turned the page, and there she was, not faded Eleanor, not the background figure, but her as she'd once been, laugh lines captured tenderly. The slope of her shoulders shaded in soft, careful strokes. Her eyes lit with a spark she barely remembered. Page after page in growing intimacy. Her hands arranging flowers, her neck bent over a book, the cling of her sundress at the pull. The latest sketches made her breath catch, the hose, the soaked dress, her startled expression, every detail etched with precision. At the bottom of the last page, scrawled in Liam's messy script, I see you. A floorboard creaked. Eleanor turned, the sketchbook falling from her hands. Liam stood in the doorway, still shirtless, a sweating bottle of water in one hand. His eyes dropped to the pages. Then met hers. You weren't supposed to see that, he said softly, no apology, no guilt. The air between them sparked. Eleanor's pulse pounded. She should have yelled, should have slapped him, called Greg, but instead, she whispered, how long? Liam stepped closer, close enough for his cologne, spicy and warm, to fog her thoughts. Since the day I moved in, 6 years of him seeing her when no one else did. His fingers brushed the sketchbook. You want me to stop? A test. They both knew it. Eleanor opened her mouth to say yes or no, anything. But the words died as Liam's thumb grazed her wrist. The line blurred, the back door slammed. Greg's voice rang from the foyer. Honey, you home? Liam didn't flinch, didn't move away. He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. Tonight, pool house, midnight. Then he was gone, scooping up the sketchbook and slipping through the patio doors just as Greg entered the room. Who were you talking to? Greg asked, barely glancing from his phone. No one, Eleanor said, skin still tingling where Liam had touched her. Just myself. Greg nodded absently, already lost in his inbox. He didn't notice her trembling hands, didn't see the flush creeping up her neck. Why would he? He hadn't looked at her in years. Eleanor told herself she wouldn't go. She made dinner, Greg's favorite lasagna, and forced herself to chew, despite the nausea roiling in her gut. She laughed at his stories, nodded at his jokes, and avoided the clock. At 11:30, she faked a headache and went to bed early. At 11:45, she heard Greg's snores rumble through the wall. At 11:58, she stood barefoot in the hallway, her silk robe clinging to her damp skin. The pool house light was on. Moonlight silvered the path as Eleanor crept across the dew-wet grass. Each step jolted her, part fear, part something headier. She paused at the door, her hand hovering just above the knob. This was it, the point of no return. Behind her, the main house slept undisturbed. Ahead, Liam waited. She could see his shadow shifting behind the curtain. One breath, then she turned the knob. Morning came like an intruder. Dawn crept through the pool house windows, casting soft light over tangled sheets. Eleanor lay perfectly still, watching dust swirl as Liam slept beside her. His breathing was deep and even, while her body vibrated with a dangerous mix of guilt and exhilaration, shame laced with something darker. She needed to go before Greg stirred, pretend it never happened. But as she eased from the bed, Liam's hand shot out, his fingers circling her wrist. Stay, he murmured, still half asleep. That one word held more tenderness than Greg had offered in years. Greg was pouring coffee when Eleanor slipped back into the main house. You're up early, he said, not looking up. Couldn't sleep, she replied, praying her voice sounded normal. Chlorine clung to her skin. She'd showered in the pool house, but it lingered, like proof. Greg finally glanced her way, his eyes flicking to her damp hair. You already showered, yoga was extra sweaty this morning. He nodded, uninterested, and returned to his newspaper. The interrogation ended before it began. She should have felt relief instead. A hot sting of anger seared her chest. He didn't care enough to be suspicious. Over the next 2 weeks, their secret took form. Notes slipped into her gardening gloves. Folded into cookbooks, meet me tonight. You looked beautiful at breakfast. I dreamed of your laugh, the gifts. A single pearl earring to replace the one she'd lost years ago. Her favorite tea imported from a Parisian shop she'd once mentioned in passing. The near touches, Liam's hand brushing hers in the hallway, his knee pressing hers under the dinner table while Greg rambled about quarterly earnings. Each glance, each brush of skin, was another spark feeding the fire, until the receipt, Eleanor, found it while doing Liam's laundry, tucked in his jeans pocket, a $300 dinner tab from La Mer, last Saturday, the night he'd claimed he had a study group. Her stomach knotted, imagining some faceless girl laughing across candlelight as Liam spooned her dessert. The jealousy hit hard, breath-stealing. That evening, Eleanor wore the emerald green dress Liam had sketched so often. She dabbed on the perfume he gave her, right where his lips had lingered. When Liam entered the kitchen, his eyes darkened. Going somewhere? Book club, she lied. His smile was slow, knowing, liar. The air between them sparked for one reckless second. She imagined grabbing his collar, demanding who he'd wined and dined. The garage door groaned open. Greg was home early. Liam stepped back, but not before murmuring, "Jealousy suits you." Greg's sudden presence brought new risks. The locked door scare, Greg jiggling the bathroom knob while Eleanor and Liam held their breath in the dark. "Why is this locked?" Greg's muffled question. Liam whispered, "Tell him you're changing towels." Then there was the phone. Eleanor saw a text thread flash on Liam's screen. Messages from Sophia K dotted with heart emojis and "can't wait for Friday." The same night he bailed on her with a group project excuse. Then, the hotel keycard, it slipped from Liam's wallet when Eleanor fetched his insurance info after a minor fender bender. The Ritz-Carlton, room 1214. Same date she texted, "I miss you." Each discovery should have stopped her, but instead, they fueled her need. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday. Eleanor, scrolling Liam's Instagram followers, found her, Sophia 22. Bronzed and bright, profile flooded with sorority snaps and bikini pics. That night, when Liam entered the kitchen where Eleanor was washing dishes, she didn't turn around. "Who's Sophia K?" "Just a classmate." "You're sleeping with her." "A beat." "Does it matter?" His words hung there, heavy with truth. It did matter, because Eleanor had drowned in guilt for him. Crossed every moral line, and he was still flirting with the shallow end. She turned slowly, soap suds dripping from her hands. "End it or I'll tell Greg everything." Liam's expression didn't crack. No guilt, no fear, just amusement. "You won't," he said, stepping closer, "because then you'd have to admit how much you need this. Tell me to stop." "Eleanor, right now." Her lips parted, no words came, because she didn't want it to end. The next morning, she found a sketch on her pillow, not of her, of Greg, alone in their bedroom, staring at the space where their wedding photo used to hang. On the back, in Liam's careful handwriting, "This is what you'll lose." The invitation arrived that Tuesday, an embossed card tucked among the bills and coupons. "Mr. and Mrs. Gregory Whitaker, you are cordially invited to Liam's 23rd birthday celebration, Saturday, 7 p.m., the Oak Room." Eleanor's fingertips left damp spots on the cardstock. She hadn't known about the party, hadn't been consulted. The formality stung, as if she were some distant guest. Not the woman he touched nightly. Greg didn't glance up from his laptop. "You goin'?" "Of course," she replied. Too quickly, that's when she saw it, the tiny clench in Greg's jaw, a tell she hadn't noticed in years. Eleanor spent 3 hours getting ready. She chose the navy wrap dress Liam loved. It brings out your eyes. She applied the expensive French perfume he'd gifted her on her wrists, neck, and behind her knees, as she fastened her pearls. Greg appeared in the doorway, watching, his expression unreadable. "You look nice," he said. The compliment hit like an explosion. Greg hadn't acknowledged her appearance in years. The Oak Room buzzed with soft laughter and the clink of glasses. Liam was at the head of the table, commanding attention. Eleanor spotted the brunette immediately. Stunning, poised, Sophia perched on Liam's left, fingers playing with her wine glass stem. Eleanor's stomach churned. "Ah, There they are. Liam stood, his smile stiff. Stepmom, stepdad. So glad you could make it, stepmom. The word bit deeper than it should have. Greg guided Eleanor to their seats, his hand briefly resting at the small of her back. She felt Liam's eyes follow the gesture, his jaw tightening. Just slightly, midway through dinner, Liam stood and tapped his knife against his glass. Thanks, everyone, for coming, he began, his voice smooth as bourbon, especially my parents. He looked right at Eleanor, for being so supportive this past year. Soft chuckles rose from the table. Eleanor's napkin slipped from her lap as she reached for water. Liam continued, I have a gift for them. He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket and handed it to Greg. Dad, you open it. Greg took it with a curious smile inside. A USB drive, silver, harmless looking. What's this? He asked, frowning. Liam's smile deepened. Why don't you ask Eleanor? The noise around them dissolved into a low hum. Eleanor's vision narrowed. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She didn't need to see the files, she knew. Liam had recorded them, photographed them, documented everything. Greg's face changed, curiosity bleeding into something far colder. He looked from his son to his wife. Eleanor opened her mouth to deny it, to explain, maybe even to beg, but Liam spoke first, or better yet. He said, pulling out his phone, let me show everyone. With a few taps, the restaurant's flat screen flickered to life. There they were, Eleanor and Liam, in the pool house. Not in flagranti, Liam was too clever for that, but with unmistakable intimacy. Her fingers trailing along his jaw, his lips brushing her shoulder. The hunger in their eyes undeniable. The table erupted, gasps. Sophia's wine glass shattered on the tile. Greg stood so fast his chair crashed to the floor. And then for a moment, the world froze. Eleanor turned to Liam. Truly seeing him for the first time, not as a lover, not even as a boy, but as what he'd always been, power cloaked in charm. This had never been about love. It had been about revenge, about punishing Greg, about taking what wasn't his simply because he could. The truth hit like ice water. She stood slowly, her voice calm and steady. You're right, Liam, I have been supportive. She turned to Greg. I supported you when you stopped seeing me. I supported Liam when he needed a mother. Her hand didn't tremble as she picked up her purse. She gestured toward the image frozen on screen. But this, she said, this wasn't support, this was destruction. She turned to go. Liam's voice followed her. Where are you going? Eleanor didn't look back. To finally put myself first, outside. The parking lot air was crisp with early autumn. She inhaled deeply. Despite the wreckage behind her, her chest felt strangely light. Greg caught up minutes later, pale and silent. Eleanor, don't. She held up a hand. Just don't. They stood there, suspended in the space between betrayal and finality. Then Greg did something unexpected. He nodded. Just once. And walked away. Her phone buzzed, a message from Liam. You'll be back. She deleted it without reading. That first night alone. The hotel room felt smaller than her old walk-in closet. The bed squeaked beneath her. The floral bedspread edged against her legs. She had brought only one suitcase, a few clothes, her grandmother's pearls, and the sketch Liam had left on her pillow that final morning. She unrolled it now, pressing the creases flat against the flimsy desk. Greg, standing alone in their bedroom, staring at the wall where their wedding portrait had once hung. A knock startled her. Room service. She hadn't ordered anything. Maybe Greg had sent something, a final olive branch. But when she opened the door, no card awaited her. Only a note on the carpet. You forgot these. Beneath it, the pair of emerald earrings Liam had gifted her. The same ones she deliberately left behind. The divorce papers arrived 6 weeks later. Greg had been more generous than expected. She got the house, modest alimony, no tabloid headlines, no courtroom spectacle. Eleanor thought she'd feel something, rage, grief, relief, but as she signed her name, the pen moved without resistance. As if her hand had known the ending long before her heart had. Her lawyer cleared his throat. There's one more thing. A sealed envelope inside, a single key and an address in the city. A note from Greg for your new studio. You always talked about painting again. The silence came next. From Liam, no texts, no calls, not when the divorce finalized, not when he posted graduation photos. Sophia clinging to his side, not even when Eleanor's old therapy practice received an anonymous complaint about unethical conduct. She told herself the silence was mercy. Then why did she dream of him nightly? Why did her hands shake when she passed someone with his build on the street? Why had she framed that damn sketch of Greg in the empty room, now hanging in her studio? Her new therapist called it trauma bonding. Eleanor called it penance. The box came on the anniversary of that night. No return address, no note. Just a collection of impossible items. The hairpin she thought she'd lost at the pool house. A cocktail napkin from the oak room, "I'm sorry," written in Liam's hand. Every note he'd ever left her, preserved carefully. At the bottom, one final sketch. Not of her, not of Greg, but of Liam, his face half in shadow. Expression unreadable. On the back, 3 words, "I saw you." Her first gallery show opened on a rainy Thursday. The title, Invisible Women, the placard read, "A portrait series of wives and mothers, fading quietly from the center of their own stories, hands empty of long-abandoned dreams, eyes blurred, mouths closed." The centerpiece filled the back wall, a self-portrait. Eleanor now, silver streaks in her auburn hair, laugh lines carved deep. Gaze steady and unflinching, she titled it Scene. As the crowd mingled, a familiar figure lingered near the exit, Greg, holding a program, his wedding ring gone. Their eyes met across the room. He gave a small nod, just once. A wordless acknowledgement of everything they'd lost and everything they'd understood. Eleanor turned back to the guests. The lesson, it had never been about an affair. It was about what happens when you disappear from your own life, when you confuse need for love, when being seen feels like salvation, until it isn't. The tragedy wasn't that Liam noticed her, it was that she had stopped noticing herself long before he arrived. One final truth Eleanor kept a secret until the very end, the morning after the show. She returned to her studio and found a single gardenia in a vase on the windowsill. No note, no fingerprints, only the faint scent of cologne still lingering in the air. She left it there until the petals browned and curled. Then she painted it. What would you have done? Could you have rebuilt from a fall like that? Would you have forgiven yourself? Or, like Eleanor, would you have had to create something beautiful from the wreckage? Because here's a truth no one tells you. Some loves don't destroy you, they reveal you. Some betrayals aren't endings, they're brutal beginnings, and sometimes, the person you need to see most is the one in the mirror. This was never just my story. You've just walked Eleanor's path from invisible wife to betrayed lover to artist reborn. But now, this story belongs to you. Because every woman has felt invisible. Every person has mistaken longing for love. Everyone has secrets they're terrified might ruin them. So, let's talk. Picture yourself at that disastrous birthday dinner. Liam cues up the video. What would you have done? Walked out with dignity, like Eleanor. B confronted Liam. Then and there. C begged Greg for forgiveness. D something else entirely. Comment below. Photo B, C, or D in the next video. I'll reveal what psychologists say is the healthiest response to betrayal. Let's be honest, Greg neglected Eleanor. Liam preyed on her pain. Eleanor betrayed herself. Who changed the most? Could Liam ever truly feel remorse? Why or why not? Eleanor's real tragedy wasn't the affair, it was the years spent unseen. If you've ever stayed in a relationship where you felt invisible, confused attention for affection, or rebuilt yourself after heartbreak, tell us in the comments. Did you know over 70% of women over 40 report feeling emotionally invisible in their relationships? So what's next? If Eleanor's journey gripped you, if it made you ache, hope, or feel recognized, subscribe now. Tap the bell so you never miss these raw, unfiltered stories about betrayal, rebirth, and second chances. Before you go, do one thing, look at your reflection, really look, and ask. When did I stop being the main character in my life? Then take one small step to change that, because the most dangerous lies aren't the ones people tell us, they're the ones we whisper to ourselves about what we deserve. Drop a comment, share your truth. Subscribe for more. This conversation is just beginning. Your story matters.